Hello, I don't know what to say. My name is Jean Daly, Twila Jean Daly, but really it's Twila Jean Parker, if I tell the truth. I am going to be 85 years old, and my children want to record this to make sure I'm not senile. I was born in McClave, Colorado, in the it's kind of southeastern part of Colorado. And my father was a rancher. He worked on the sheep ranch. A house was provided, and this was during some very economic slow years for the United States. 1935, December 10, 1935. I was the first child for Charlie and Enda Parker. I was born at home in this rural area, and 3 years later I had a sister named Mary, and then between these times my mother had other children, but they were what we now call RH factor babies. They were born full term and beautiful babies, but they died soon after they were born. So there's a little cemetery in McClave, Colorado, with 3 little graves for a couple of brothers and a sister.
Do you think you're more like your mom or your dad?
I think I'm like no one I know. I started school when I was not quite 5. It was really 4 going on 5. I wouldn't have been 5 till December. And in a little one-room schoolhouse where all 8 grades were just in the same room. And it was not a very way to start an education for a child. Daddy then got a job for a rendering works out of Pueblo, Colorado. And so we moved into a rural area outside of Swink, Colorado, between Rocky Ford and La Junta, Colorado. And he worked for the rendering works there, and that meant he went around to all the different ranches in the area and picked up livestock that were dead or shot or killed the ones that were sick. And then once a week, he would put this truckload of these dead animals and take them to Pueblo. Now, where I lived, and it's something that no one even understands nowadays, it was called the dugout. And this was where we moved to, and this house was half underground. And this was because of the weather and everything. It was a very small 3-room house. And of course, the facilities for the toilets and everything were outside. No running water. There was a well to get the water. But they did have electricity there. So Mama made our clothes out of flour sacks because they were really pretty back then. They had real pretty designs and things on them. And so almost all the women did that at that time because those flour sacks were pretty. So they made us clothes out of them. And my mother had a sewing machine of her mama's, and she did sew. I spent 2 years in the first grade. And needed to be so, because I couldn't read a thing, and all those kids were already reading. One year, when I was in the 6th grade, my daddy helped his sister, my Aunt Bill, and all of her family move to Madera, California. And he got out there, and my dad fell in love with Madera, California. He said, "This is the land of milk and honey, because your fruit grew right on the trees. The weather was perfect all year long." And he just fell in love. And he came back and told Mama, "I want to move out there to Madera, California, where my sister lives and all of her family." My mother was brokenhearted, but she always did exactly what my dad wanted to do. And I thought it was a big adventure. I was excited going to California. Wow, I thought I'd be a movie star. It was, now that I think about it, I know my mother must have been very sad and upset. She left all of her brothers and sisters behind and her father behind. We got out there and there were no jobs for my dad. The jobs were so scarce. And we were living with Aunt Bill and her family in a 2-bedroom house, all of us, until we could find a place to live and Daddy get a job. Finally, Daddy got a job as a taxi driver, and they made very little money, and we got us a 1-bedroom house, and by that time we had Lois too, you know. So there was Mary and Lois and I and Mom and Dad all living in a one-bedroom house. Cotton fields were all around Madera. Madera is a very agriculture area. And somebody said, you know, we know some families that make pretty good out there picking cotton sometimes in the winter time. So my dad thought, okay, we could get all of us out there in Aunt Bill's family, and we'll pick cotton and see how much we we couldn't do that. We were starved to death. I mean, I can remember how much you made, 5 cents a 100 pounds or something. Oh my gosh, it was horrible. Big old long thing you pull behind you and scratch you. No, we didn't make anything. We didn't even make enough money to pay the light bill. We could not have done that. But so we never did that, but one winter was never again redoing that. But during September, the grapes were really big crops in Madera, California. I mean, it's a big agriculture, and the grapes were just fields of grapes. So one year they said, you know, you can go out and you can cut grapes, and that could help get by school clothes. So Mama and Aunt Bill took all of us kids and took us out to the grape fields, and during the hot summers when it's just like 110 out, and the dirt was like powder, and Mary and I got a roll by ourselves to cut these grapes, and then you put them on a tray, and we got 5 cents a tray. So we thought we made enough there to buy school clothes. But then I got a job. When I was in high school, I went to high school, I think it was a sophomore, maybe it was a junior in high school. I got a job. Somebody said there's a root beer stand and it's opening up, brand new, and they knew the owner and they could get me a job car hopping. And I did that until the rest of the time till I left California. I did the car hopping. And I started out with, gosh, I think 50 cents an hour. That kept me out of the grape fields. I liked that a lot. Didn't have to go back out and cut those grapes. Every Saturday, my cousins and I would all meet in Rocky Ford, and we'd go to the theater. Mom and Dad would drop us all off, and Aunt Bill dropped off her kids too. And we'd all went to a movie theater, no parents, just kids. And we'd stay there almost all day. And there was always a Roy Rogers or Gene Autry or some Western, but Roy Rogers was my favorite. And we would stay there almost all day.
Watch the same movie over and over.
Watch the same movie over and over, over and over. And we did. We thought we wasted our time if we only saw it once. That was a waste of our time. Where was that, Michael? You just interrupted me, so now I don't know where I am. Where did I leave off? I was a car hop in Madera. My daddy had a 6th grade education. She had an 8th grade education. And her and Dad said no matter what, all of us kids were going to get our high school diploma. Even though I would have never graduated without Aunt Mary, because Aunt Mary did all my book reports for me. Because I don't know why I didn't like to read then. Now I consume books. I just love books forever. And then Aunt Mary got me through high school by making all my book reports. I'd say, Mary, how many books have you read? I need a book report. So she'll tell you that to this day. She helped get me through graduate from high school. Carl came along when I was about 16, my brother. But so there was Mary and Lois and myself. And then when I was about 16, Carl was born. And Carl was also an RH factor baby, and for the first time they learned a lot about this, and they gave him a complete blood transfusion when he was born. And he did very well with it. He was a very healthy boy, strong boy, and we just adored him, spoiled him rotten. The bad part about so much of my high school years is when my father turned 40 in August of one year, and my daughters got that year down somewhere. And he was burned like a torch from his waist up. He at work, he was working, he went away from the taxi driver. He had a real good job with Madera County with the mosquito abatement department. And he was using an acetylene torch, and there was an empty TNT barrel not too far. It exploded and got my dad from the waist up and made him like a torch. And instead of rolling like drop and roll, which every child knows now, he started running. And people came and heard it run and tackled him and rolled him around, which probably saved his life. He was in the hospital from then on, off and on, for years and years. Skin graftings and pain, lots of pain, and lots of disfigurement. My children have never seen their grandfather before he was burned with all of his scars and everything. But I remember him in my head as my handsome daddy. And he just, I lost his nose, lost his ears, lost the fingers because he threw up his hands over his eyes when he was burned. And the pain that he had to go through until he died at 70, so he's 30 years with that disfigured body. When Daddy was in the hospital, she miscarried, had another miscarriage, and then it was just hard management. And after Daddy died, of course, the income quit. And you know, there was not a lot of resources like there are now. But it was a sad time. But my daddy, much as I say this, I think my children will all testify, he never lost his sense of humor or joy of life. If you wouldn't think he would, you'd think he'd be a bitter, cranky old man, but he kept his love for life and love for the church and love for his Lord and love for his family. And the grandchildren, all his grandchildren, Mary's children, Lois's children, Danny's, adore him, and they have wonderful memories of him and Grandma. Wonderful memories. So by the time I turned 18, I'd had the same boyfriend, Millard Walters, for 2 years in high school. I adored him. I thought there was nothing cuter than Millard Walters. Oh, he was so cute. And so whenever he went into the Air Force, and he called me up and said, I'm coming home. I'll only be able to be there for like, I think he said 2 or 3 weeks. He said, let's get married because I'm going to go to Panama. And he said, when I come home, let's get married. And this was 1954. And I thought, I'm only 18 years old, and so are you. What are we going to do to get married? But he said, oh, you know, age doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter. He talked me into it too. And so I graduated high school one day, got married the next day. The next 3 days later, he went off to Panama. And I kept my car hopping job until we got enough money to pay my fare to Panama. I was 19 when I got to Panama, and we spent 3 years down in Panama, my husband and I, my new husband, and we had it was pretty good 3 years really, because we just had each other, and all of our friends around us were in the same boat we were as far as poverty, and we lived right smack dab in Panama's city of Panama, saving nickels, counting out the slices of bread to last until every week. I mean, those were poor years. And what happened? I got pregnant as I got there. And then Tom was born, and that next October Tom was born. And we thought we had a toy. And then nobody told me you could get pregnant right away again. And 11 months later, I had Shelley. I didn't know that would happen. That was just such a big surprise. And so then we had a girl toy and a boy toy to play with. Then we came home in 1957. We came home, and we went back to California to see our family, but nothing was the same as when I left. Oh, I wanted to get back home and see my mom and dad so badly. And then you get home, and nothing is the same when you go back, nothing. Mama had another child, so I've got a brother, Danny, same age as Tom, and I didn't know my brother didn't know me. Mary had gotten married. My sister Mary married Chester Holmes. She got married. My sister Lois was a little frolicky young teenager. She was so cute. Daddy and Mama were just living on welfare. Everything was hard for them. And we were stationed we went to Sacramento. We're stationed at Air Force Base in Sacramento. And I was never happy there. Never was I happy there at that. And so one day, my husband then, who did not want to be married at that time, I'll put it that way, to not say ugly things. He did not want to be married anymore, really. And he said, you know, I think I could go to Formosa for a year and a half, and we could get the car paid for, its bills paid for, and then I could come back and everything be okay, and you could stay in Madeira. I said, yay, that sounds like a good idea to me. Well, I didn't know that he wanted me to live with Mom and Dad. I thought I was going to get a little place with Shelley and Tom and have my own little apartment. But he raised such a fuss that He thought I was going to be getting boyfriends of men coming every night. Yeah, to my 2 kids, sure I am. And I'm sure Tom and Shelley have got memories of playing outside with Dad and Carl all the time. And they were outside from morning to night. They played all the time, all the time. I thought it was wonderful. I did get a little part-time job downtown Madera at a dress shop. And I got just a little part-time job and Mama watched the kids. Nothing big, but something. And then he came home in 1960. He came home from Formosa and tells me that he had had a live-in girlfriend the whole time he was there. And I said, no, let's give our marriage a chance. I've got these 2 kids. Little did I know, I was pregnant again already. I mean to tell you, that was the easiest thing I ever did, was get pregnant. Then I said, I'm pregnant. There's no way we're dissolving this marriage. I'm pregnant. You're going to be supporting me and these kids just like I am. And we're not getting a divorce, no way. So we moved to Colorado Springs, and we rented a nice house there, but we did fuss a lot. We fussed a lot, bad fusses, because I didn't like him very much by then, and he didn't like me very much by then either. I had his uniforms all washed up, ready for go to work, and he had run off to some bar, and he came, and I kept waiting for him to come home because he had to get his clothes. He was a shift worker, and he didn't come home. And I thought, what in the world? And the next night, he didn't come home. So I went to the phone. I had to go borrow a neighbor's phone, and I called where he worked, and they said, man, we haven't seen him, and he's going to be in big time trouble with the bosses here because he hasn't even called in to say he...
That's still military, right?
Yeah, military, Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. And I said, they said, we're going to have somebody from the command come out and talk with you. I said, okay. Well, the doorbell rang, and I thought that's who it was, but it was not. It was a chaplain from the base said that they had found him, and he had died. He was dead. He had apparently taken a hose and committed suicide with carbon monoxide poisoning. And I mean, needless to say, this was a embarrassing, sad, humiliating. I could list about 5 other adjectives that goes with this, but I mean, it was just something that was unbearable, unbearable. Called my mom and dad and his mom and dad in Madera and told them, and I went back, and I'm pregnant too, 7 months pregnant. In 1960, Mike was born, and at the same time, my 2 sisters, Mary and Lois, had babies at the very same time. So there was Mike and Bobby and Dean. And I do have to say this. Michael was a joy. He was a pure joy. He brought laughter to our family. He was cute. He was funny. He made us laugh all the time. So I have to say he was like sent by God for us because he united us again as a family. And our family increased by 1, but our family increased by a lot more than that because now we had Mike, and he was fun, and he made all of us laugh and enjoy life more. I went to a little church in Madera where I was raised, a Christian church, and they had a choir director there who was stationed at a military base right outside of town, and his name was Jim Daly, and he was a captain. Well, my goodness, I thought that was wonderful. An officer, because Millard was really low ranked. He was enlisted, he was a sergeant. And my dad said, you know, he's single, Gene. I said, Dad, please, I've got 3 kids here. 3 kids, and you want me to say, he's not even going to look at me and my 3 kids, forget that. I decided to maybe play it coy and try it. So
you joined the choir.
So I joined the choir, and I can't sing. He was the choir director. I could tell he was paying attention to me. I could tell. My Aunt Bill was in the choir too, and she told him, she said, you know, my niece is not married. She's a young widow with 3 kids. And he said he remembered saying, 3 kids? Oh my goodness. 1, maybe 3 kids? Really? Yeah, 3 kids. But I could tell he was still, I looked pretty good. One night he said, would you like to go get a cup of coffee? I said, okay. And we get a cup of coffee. He said, how about next Sunday, let's going out to lunch after church? I said, okay, because I have to have my mama take care of my 3 kids. And we had one date that was January 1st, and we were married that next June. But we knew right away we'd probably get married. I mean, it was just so obvious to me and him both. And I thought I had Prince Charming. That's what I thought. And so we got married that June and lived on a little radar station. And let me tell you, the house that we lived in on that radar station was one of the best homes I had ever lived in. And it's still right up there at the top. I don't know if Shelley remembers it or not. It was a 3-bedroom house. It had washer and dryer, a laundry room. It had everything for me. I adored that house. A garage, it was just, I thought, this is the best house I have ever lived in my whole life. We lived there. Michael was a rascal, though he made me look like a bad mama a couple of times. I had him in the car when I put groceries away. I heard horn honking out on the road, and he had put the car, in the car, I left him in there. He put the car in gear, backed it out. And people couldn't go around the car. There was him up there thinking he's driving. And then one day he got way out on the main highway on a tricycle. Shelley and Tom were supposed to have been watching that little boy, and was riding down the center lane of a highway on his tricycle with a big truck behind him honking the horn. Jim Daly was coming out of the military base about that time. He said, what is going on? There's somebody's kid out in it was his kid. Again, I felt like a bad mama, Shelley was very attached to her grandma and grandpa, very attached. And we knew we were going to be going to Germany the next year. And I thought, it's going to be so hard to take Shelley away from her grandma and grandpa. So hard. Because Shelley just absolutely, that was her comfort zone, was her grandma and grandpa. 1963, we went to Germany. And we had what was the name of that base there? Simbach Air Force Base. We spent 3 years in Germany. And they were wonderful years, I thought. I thought we all really enjoyed our German years, our years over there, with all the snow and the sledding, and the schools were pretty good there too, and the kids had friends, and we had the chapel services. We traveled camping. We camped around Europe. And we went to Italy, and we went to Switzerland, and we went to Holland, and we just went to a little bit of France, not a lot of France. Where else did we go? Austria. And we did a lot of camping. We had a whole camping gear thing that Tom and Dad could put up in a heartbeat. And then we came back to the United States, so far away from my family. They were in California, and we come to North Carolina. And it was, what is it?
Middle of the 60s.
Yeah. When interracial, the civil rights things were going on, and my kids were bused, Shelley and Tom were bused all over the place. But it was a hard time during that time because of integrating the blacks and white schools. And they were busing the kids all over, trying to get the racial balance out even. Vietnam War was on during this time, and we had the hippies that were, hippie movement was big, and kids were trying to run away from home and become flower children, and thank goodness my kids were not that old. But then Dad went to Vietnam after, I forget how many years, 5 or 6 years there. He went to Vietnam. Out at Fort Bragg, there was this doctor, Jeffrey McDonald, who called the police and said his wife and two little children had been stabbed, brutally killed, and that he was wounded, but he called enough. Come to find out, he did it himself. But he said all these hippies came into the house saying, kill the pigs, and put blood all over his house, everything. And I believed it. I believed that that's what was happening.
What happened at Manson? Because
of the Manson murders in California. So for the first time, I bought deadbolt locks put in Fayetteville House. I never had those before because I thought the hippies were out to kill us. And first time I'd ever put deadbolts on my house.
That was Dad in Vietnam? Or?
I can't remember if Dad, I think Dad was in Vietnam then. Yeah. I have to say this, my kids are always funny. They always made me laugh. They could make me mad, but they could make me laugh. They were funny kids all through. They were entertaining, always entertaining. And I'll never forget, Shelley must have been, 18, and Connie was like 4 years younger, and they put on a show for us. Instead of Donnie and Marie, they called it Connie and Shelley Show. And I mean, she's 18 and putting on a little show for me. I mean, if I think about it now, it's funny. 18, I was married, but Shelley at that age, she was putting on little shows still. Little song and dance shows. I mean, Tom, the neighbor, we had Tom Hood and Mike. They were going to put on a show in the garage one day. Remember that, Mike?
Shelley wanted to put on all of her.
And Mike and them were going to even do a soft shoe. Tom and Mike were going to do a soft shoe act, a little soft shoe show. Oh, I had funny kids. They were funny. They were funny. They always made me laugh. They were hilarious. So Dad came back and within a year he got out of the military. My kids, one by one, started going off to college. And then one day Dad came home and said, I think I want to be a pastor. I just can't get this off my mind. I want to be a minister. I just feel that I'm compelled by God to go to seminary. Mike was just got out of high school, or just graduated from high school. Shelley was just graduated from Atlantic Christian College, and Tom was still in his 18th year of college, I think. Gosh, I thought Tom would never get out of college. Still a family joke that every album, every book that came out for years had Tom's picture in it. So we went off to Kentucky, Dad and I did, Falmouth, Kentucky, a little bitty rural area in Kentucky. And he went to seminary and for 3 years, and then he decided to stay a 4th year and work on his doctorate. And we came back to North Carolina then, and been served here, living in pretty much this house the whole time. And he retired here after being a pastor at the Christian church. And we had a good life together, a real good life. Shelley had already gotten married, was living in New York. Tom got married, was living in Georgia. Was Mike married then? Yes, Michael was married at that time, first time. All of my kids have been married at least once or twice. But we had a good life here. And he died in 2008, but he didn't stay sick very long, and so it was a blessing. It was a blessing. And here I am, going on 85 this year, healthy woman, except when I complain about my back. And I've got two grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. All of them are wonderful. I'm a blessed woman, a lucky woman, and I've been blessed all of my life.